Hi, and welcome back to Sling and Paint with James. I'm your host, James, of course, and today we're going to see if we can't finish, or at least mostly finish, the guys from Zynvaded by We Have Issues. Welcome back. Alright, so this is our third video involving the miniatures from Zynvaded by We Have Issues. I've gotten most of them done already for you. As you can see, I've done silver, green. I've actually changed up the green to make it just a little bit more green. Might even show up a little bit better on camera here. The orange. Now, the special thing about the orange is I actually already went ahead and inked some of them. So you can see the major difference between inked and non-inked, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about inking and how it's, really defines and brings out the shadows and the shades in your miniatures. So if you take a look here, again, this guy is a prime black, so I'm not using somebody different. You can see how bright and light the orange is, and then if you look here, you can kind of see the difference side by side about how the oranges are a lot different, and that's just using an orange shade, not an ink. I mean, you can use an ink if you have them available, but most of the time it's going to be a shade that you're going to be using. The one that I'm using this time is Fugan Orange, again from the Citadel range. And then we're going to use some Nuln oil, and that's going to be mostly for our silver bits. And then for the greens, we're going to use a green shade, if I even have a green shade. If not, we'll make it work somehow. Yes, I do have a green shade. I just don't have it in the big green pots. I have it in my smaller pots, but we'll dig that out later. So let's get down to it. As you can see here, what I've done is I've actually gone ahead and I've inked most of the orange spots, and it actually just really drives up the orange contrast of the colors, which makes it, the orange that we did before was a great base color. This just gives it a little bit more punch. It actually, really shows that it's orange. What I've also done is I've gone in here. There we go. Let's see if we can get that to come out a little bit there. You can see that some of the cloth I've done, and what I've used a base color called Zandri Dust on that. Here, let's see if we can get that to focus in there. If not, trust me, that's what it says. It says Zandri Dust. Because it looks more like an actual piece of cloth uniform and not so much a hard armor. So let's change it up a little bit. So this side right here is still just the base Zandri Dust. I haven't done anything to it yet. But if you look over here, I'm not sure if you can really see how much it's darkened up. But I've actually just thrown some Agrax Earthshade. That one right there on it, and it actually helps bring in the folds, darkens it up, and makes it look a little less fleshy. Now, of course, we're going to go across all of our miniatures, and we're gonna fix. I think if we look at this guy right here, he's supposed to have a white helmet, but you can clearly see right here that there are some black splatters all over here. There's even some black splatters across the orange, so we'll go back and we'll fix that up. Don't worry about making a mess. Don't worry about fixing things up. It's gonna happen. So let's see what happens when we throw down some Nuln oil across our white bug, who has a big shiny, new metal arm and the and the big heavy weapon. I find that these guys are the best guys to actually show what's going to happen, as opposed to the smaller ones. So shake up your paints all the times, even your shades. This one here, you can grab yourself the shade brush from Citadel Paints, which is the ones that I'm using right now. And again, there you go. And a medium shouldn't be any more than you need, but don't be afraid to try out different brands of brushes. You might find that different brushes will work, you know, different brands of brushes might fill your needs a little bit better than a Citadel brush. So don't be afraid. And what you're going to do is you're just going to lather that on there. You're going to work it in. Make sure you get it in all the crevices, because what's going to happen is the shades here are going to work themselves with your help. They're going to help work yourselves all into the little crevices. And it's just going to give it that little bit of punch, that little bit of reality that you want to taking a flat paint job and making it just a little bit more dynamic. Now, again, you don't have to do this. You know, if you're happy with just a straight silver paint job, or if you want to get your miniatures onto the table quickly, you can forego painting them all together if you want to get them on there quickly. You can just pop them together, put them together, and go and play and have fun. But if you want to take a little bit of time, make them, you know, take that little bit of extra time, make them look that much better, you can go ahead and give them a paint job. And then after that, if you want to go again one step further, you can go ahead and do shades, do highlights, washes, which is basically what this kind of is. It's a wash, because what it's going to do, we're going to wash it over the entire miniature, or the entire area that you want colored. You can kind of see already how much different that that weapon looks. And then we're going to do the same thing for the mechanical arm here. We're just gonna, it just gives it that little bit of extra. I don't know. I know I've already said it, but it does give you that little extra punch. You know, it makes it look that much more realistic. Because when you look at metal stuff, unless it's, you know, pristine and brand new, it's gonna have a little bit of grime. It's gonna have a little bit of, you know, dirt in the mix. It's just going to make it look used and, you know, worn. There we go. So we're going to set this guy aside to dry. And we're going to take the other big fella who's on the handle, and you can again see, you know, here's a good side by side actually. Before a wash and after a wash. Oh dear. One of the problems of having multiple projects on a painting table is that sometimes you get ink or paint or something, maybe on a miniature, that you don't really want to. Or perhaps you just have so many paints on your table, like I do, that you just have a hard time finding the room to put everything. Now, like I said in I think I said in the previous episode, or possibly the first episode here, I did not have a chance to put these guys together. They came to me already pre-assembled. And that's okay. In later videos, hopefully we'll be able to go over assembly, cleaning, sub-assemblies, all kinds of cool things that we can do. All the while taking a look and seeing how the miniatures look, you know, before assembly, after assembly, what kind of material they're made out of. But these are good ones to start with. They're nice. They're relatively simple. I mean, as far as as far as design goes, I mean they're fairly wide open, so you can get to a lot of the different parts. Some of the parts that I would have liked to have gotten to a little bit easier are where the weapons meet like the chest or meet the groin. I would have loved to have been able to actually get in there with a little bit more tidier of a brush, but it is what it is. What's the old saying? If wishes were dragons, all a pern would fly, or something like that. There we go. So now we have the silver done on both of the big heavy weapon units for this game. And it's basically just a continuation of doing the same thing over and over. Well, not over and over, but even the little guys. All you do is you just draw it, just kind of throw it on there. Work it through. If you find that you have too much, you can sop it back up with your brushes. And that's not a problem. There we are. You can kind of see the change already. It brings in my lowlights, brings out my highlights, and it just makes things look a little bit more realistic. Like if I kind of like the way it's a nice little cheat to get something to look good fast. And of course, the more ink, the more shade that you add on, just the darker and darker it'll get. And maybe that's what you're looking for. Maybe that's what you want. From here, we're going to let the ink dry, and then we'll go on to some model cleanup. As you can see, I had some paint splatters over some of the miniatures, some of the previous colors that I did. So what we'll do is we'll just go over cleaning up things, maybe showing you how to do some of the white, and we'll just kind of take it from there. Alright, we'll see you when the paints are dry. And welcome back. So now we're pretty sure that the ink is dry on these miniatures. So if we can look and see exactly how it's changed from the bare silver to giving us that little bit of depth and a little bit of perception, a little bit of depth anyway, and it makes it look like an actual piece of metal. So you can go ahead and you can give it a slight dry brush of the original silver color just to bring up the highlights, to touch on those paces. And we'll go ahead and we'll do that later on, and I'll just kind of give you a quick shot. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to fix up the white, because if you notice right here on the miniature, the cuff down here has a little bit of black, and we don't want that to be black. We want that to be nice and white like the rest of the armor. So what we're going to do is we are going to take and once I find that, that'll be the highlight if we go that far. Here we are. We are going to take our Celestia Gray, and we're going to start doing just basing. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's give one of the other test miniatures that has some white on it. You know what? Never mind. We'll deal with it later. Because what you could do also to bring out those panel lines just a little bit more is give the you can actually give them a shot of black wash, and it'll actually pull into those lines and help pop them out a little bit more, and then we go back in and clean up. What we're going to do is we're going to do a little trick. We're going to take a nice light gray. This one is called Celestia Gray. And we're actually going to go over top wherever we want the white to be. We're going to go over with this gray. And help cover up any little imperfections, mistakes, whatever we may have, because it is a base color. And I know it's really hard to see, you know, what I'm doing in the video right here, but basically I'm using a medium base brush, and I'm using the Celestia Gray, and I'm going again, just going over the white parts, making sure that I getting that gray in all the spots. And then I'll give you a look-see how it looks afterwards. And I think you'll be quite surprised. And it will actually start to make the miniature look a lot more clean and a lot more precise. You know, and don't be afraid to change up the colors. Just because I'm using the standard colors that the company told me that, you know, that the two factions were after they landed on Earth, doesn't mean that's what you have to paint them as. So don't be afraid to get right in there, change it up. You know, if you like purple, by all means, make your army purple. If you like blue, go with blue. Sky's the limit. These are your miniatures. These are the ones that you have to look at and play with every day. And I did kind of touch on that in the first episode. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get some of the bigger, flatter areas done with this medium brush, and then we're going to switch back to a smaller brush when we start needing to get into details. So you can kind of see that, you know, I've tried to get into all the little crevices, trying to get into all the little corners, or as best as I can with this big brush. And the Celestia Gray is a nice light gray, and it's a base gray. So that when we work back up, things will look absolutely amazing. And going with gray over the white, so much nicer. Gray's a little bit easier to, you know, if you miss a spot, gray's a little bit easier to hide than, say, going over with a red over white. If you miss a spot with the red, you'll know, because you have that glaring white spot. And even on this miniature, you can see some spots that I have missed, and those have to be rectified before we can call this miniature finished. Alright. So I've touched up a few areas. There we go. Oh, there's a big black and silver spot on the back of his helmet. We need to cover that up. Yeah, so we've done some nice big big areas here with our bigger brush. Now what we can do is we can clean that off. We can start going in, actually, and then we can start going in with our smaller brushes. And we can start refining some of those details, some of those areas that we weren't too sure about. And it will start looking amazing. Also, don't worry about your skill level either. You get good with practice, so start wherever you are and just go. Some of the world's best miniature painters were not always the world's best miniature painters. Constant practice, constant work, trying new things, learning from other people. That's the way you do it. Go down to your local hobby store and see if there are people painting miniatures. And if you like what if you really like what they're doing, ask them how they did it. Ask them if they have time to even show you how they did it. And if they do, all that's going to do is just help promote the community and also make your miniatures look that much better as your skill improves. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to one of the smaller brushes. Again, we're probably going to go back to my favorite, which is the medium layer brush. It's actually so well used that the paint that the label is coming off the handle. This will give me a little bit more control, a little bit more ease in getting into those little nooks and crevices and those other parts that I was not too fond of trying to get into with a bigger brush. And again, just because I'm using Citadel brushes doesn't mean that's the end-all be-all. There's plenty of other brush manufacturers out there. Find what works for you. Like Citadel works for me. Maybe they don't work for you. Maybe they're not fine enough for what you want to do. And that's fine. Okay. So I've nearly gone through and base coated all of my white with this beautiful Celestial Grey. The only part that I haven't done yet is the large white piece on the back. The rest of it, I'm not sure if you can really see, but you can see it's a little bit darker because I've gone over it with this gray. And you're like, but it was already white. Why did you go back over it? Well, it's to give you depth and definition, and honestly, it also gives it a little bit more scale. And you'll understand once we go on to some other pieces. And again, these guys here are the best. The bigger pieces are the best pieces for me to use for you guys, so you can see the different. Not only you can see the magnificent detailing that are on these miniatures, but it also gives me a chance to actually get in here and show you the different techniques that I use. And these again are not all my techniques. These are techniques that I've learned from a variety of different painters from my local hobby store. Okay. what we're going to do now is we're not going to worry about making sure we have all the panels and stuff like that. I'll clean them up and finish them up later. Next time we come back, you're going to see that most of them are going to be done. All right, so we'll leave that there. Of course, with the hobby paints, the Vallejo paints or the Citadel paints, which is my particular brand, they dry up real quick, and you can just boom go right on to the next one. While I search for my next paint, which is called Uthway Gray, it's an almost white. I know I have it. It's just somewhere on my desk of many colors. It's okay. What you can see here is what I've done with some of the black guys. I've actually gone, or the black primer guys. I've already gone back in and I've cleaned them up a little bit. I haven't necessarily added all of the black wash to the weapons. At least not to these guys yet, anyway. But I will. You can see that how they look tidied up. I haven't given a wash to the orange yet, and I haven't washed the greens yet. Some of them I haven't even brought up the greens to the next level of color, and that's okay. That still shows us all the different steps that we have left to go. And this is just, this is a little bit higher than tabletop. In tabletop, you could really just slap a couple of colors on, say it looks good, and go. I'll be right back when I find my other color. Welcome back. I found my color. So let's go on. Again, I'm going to take my medium layer brush, wherever it went to again. My desk is honestly such a mess that I never know what's coming or going. There we go. I found it. And we're just going to work on one panel here. And we're just going to give you an idea of what we're going to do. And then, I'll touch everything up. And you'll get to see later how it all turned out. And it's going to turn out amazing. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to just work on this big calf plate. Just right here. I'm going to give you an idea of building back up to white from gray using grays. That's what I thought. Thin. That's okay. And again, I know you're asking, but hey, paint slinger, everything was white already. Why don't you just leave it white, move on? You're absolutely right, but you can't highlight white. So what you need to do is you need to take it back down into the realm of grays, which look white. Repaint them, do a final edge highlight, and again, this is something I'll show you guys in a little bit here. And then your grays, by comparison, will look white, and your edge highlight will look amazing. Okay. And again, you don't need to go this far for just a tabletop. This is going just a little bit further Make it look make it look a little extra good. Also, this is a hobby. This is something that you want to spend some time on. You know, it's cold and dreary outside, or you know, the rain is coming down. You don't really want to go outside. Or it's snowy, it's middle of winter, you don't want to go outside. Or possibly it's way too sunny and way too hot. And again, you just don't want to go outside. Pull out the old painting table. Grab a project. And if you're like most hobbyists, you'll have several. I have several. It's the bane of my partner's existence some days. But she loves it, or she loves me, and she accepts my habits. So, yeah. Or, you know, conversely, maybe you found him and he accepts your habits, and you know, maybe even helps you out with them, or you know, gives you them for birthdays or Christmas. If you can find a person that accepts your better habits and just, you know, it's just who you are, then all the power to you both. And if you're single, hopefully, you know, you accept your own habits, and just, there you go. So you can see the difference between the slightly darker gray and now the really light gray. And I'm using a very thin down paint, and I'm building up layers after layers to get a nice never mind that going off in the background. There we are. You can see. Nice and lighter. And I will be back in a couple minutes. Okay, so now that we've come back, we're just going to finish off with a little bit of edge highlighting on this one panel, and you can see the difference between sprayed white and painted white. And again, make sure that you're shaking all of your paints before you use them. Otherwise, they could bubble gum on you and be completely useless. So I do have plenty of other projects in the wings, and of course we'll get into them as time goes on. Now, if there's anything specific that you would like to see or that I have access to, no, medium shade, no. One of these days I'll actually organize my brushes. There we go. So now I've switched over to the small layer brush. And I know that I've said that I pretty much use my medium layer for everything. And that's true. I do pretty much use my medium layer brush for everything. but there are other brushes and they have their uses. So what I'm using here is I'm using white Scar, which is a layer paint, which is a thinner layer. And we're going to do what's called an edge paint, or an edge highlight. And it's basically just hitting the sharpest corners of the armor and it's going to make it look real good. And here, if you'd like, you can start playing with directional lighting, or if you want, you can just kick the highlights over all the edges. Nothing wrong with that either. That's what a lot of hobbyists actually do. If it's armor and it's got a hard edge on it, it's gonna get the highlight. That actually looks really good. I don't know how well these highlights are going to show up on camera, but it is what it is. And the way that you're going to want to do your edge highlight is you're going to want to fill your brush, water down the paint just a hair. It's kind of up to you to play around with the consistency to find what works for you and what works for your miniature. Drag the brush at about a 45-degree angle, give or take. And lay the paint. And if you find that the highlight is too thick, if it's not quite thin enough for you, just go back in with the color that you had underneath. Fix it up. There's nothing that can't be really fixed by either the next layer of paint or the layer below it. So again, don't worry about it. Just keep going on, keep learning. I don't know if you can see it, but there actually is a white highlight around the edges of the armor panel. Now you have a white looking panel with a nice white highlight. And the next time you see me, we will have a bunch of these guys, if not fully completed, mostly completed with edge highlighting, and then we'll discuss dry brushing. Until next time, get out there and sling your paint.